I am so excited and I cannot believe that I'm here with Rina Ayuyang, and we're going to talk a little bit about Blame This on the Boogie, Anatomy of a Panel. Welcome.
Hi, how are you, Frederick? How are you doing?
I'm I'm doing okay, in spite of everything, and it's a little bit drizzly
Yeah.
over here in Columbus, Ohio. I wish I could be there with you,
Is
where
it
it's
hot and humid right now?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
hot and
okay. Yeah,
humid.
don't miss
I
that.
think I think you probably remember those days. Um,
Yeah.
so speaking of which,
Mhm.
Rena, tell me why comics?
Well, I've always loved comics as a kid when I was reading, Sunday Funnies. I don't know if that's still around anymore, but in the newspapers and just comic strips and having books of like Peanuts comic strips, those collected books, those paperbacks, and just loving that humor and loving the comic timing of that and having and creating characters and in these kind of bubble worlds was fun and exciting. um and then later on to learn more about like the independent comics scene, like so-called alt comic scene, like John Porcellino and Adrian Tomine and Chester Brown, Lynda Barry, and just knowing that comics were also for kids, but also adults telling stories that were true to themselves and not about superheroes, not just about superheroes or action figures or things that were so-called out of the action adventure, and just being able to tell slice of life tales or stories that were very truthful and universal. So I just love drawing. I've always loved drawing since I was a kid, and to be able to do that and also be a storyteller, um, was is just always kind of addictive to me. Just to share stories that I know connect well with other people, no matter where they come from. There's a connection there.
Was there a moment when you actually started to tell your stories through drawing?
During high school, I tried to do this comic strip that was about me. So I knew early on, not even knowing that autobio existed through comics. I tried to do a comic strip of me. It was in charge of a late night talk show, and so it was just kind of autobio, but also just fictional, and so just following that whole comic strip format. So I knew that I always wanted to write stories through comics, but as to like writing stories about my life, that didn't really come about until, like, even when I started doing mini comics again, like my first mini comic Namby Pamby was still fictional, like fiction based. I didn't have stories at all about myself, and I think it wasn't only until like the third issue, or maybe later second issue or third, that I started talking about my family and our history, and I think maybe it was just because again, John Porcellino, who did mini comics through King Cat, talking about his own life and his experiences in Chicago, and um, just knowing that I could tell stories about my own life too. So I guess the nature of the storytelling had evolved over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Hmm.
exciting, and I'm so glad that you've decided to dedicate your life
Yeah.
to, a good deal of your life to this. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it is a courageous journey, right? A courageous journey.
It is. I also think that comics, and I don't know if we're going to talk about that, but comics is really inclusive, welcoming community, from
Mm.
all the different artistic, uh, I guess, industries or communities, painting or, computer science or whatever. There's always this sort of power struggle of who can do things a little bit more competitive, and who knows more about their craft. Um, that kind of competition.
Mm.
But with comics, for me, it always felt like people just welcomed me in and taught me, helped kind of mentor me in a way, and also like were very willing to share what they knew about, tools and how to make comics. And um so it's just a very, I've never felt that same welcoming inclusivity than I have through comics.
Mm. And
Yeah.
you've published in so many different venues, formats.
Yeah.
So that must also be really exciting for you, that it's not just one kind of, space that you're working in. Exhibitions, and you have your
Mhm.
podcast, zines. You've
Yeah.
self-published. You've been recognized with nominations, Eisner and the Ignatz, for your best short story. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it must
crazy.
be keep you alive and interested and excited.
Yeah, and I think it's just like seeing other people's work excites me too, and I think that's also how I got into publishing that microprint with Yam Books, is that I've just always been excited about what other cartoonists are doing, and I've always kind of wanted to promote their work in some way, whether it be helping to publish a work of theirs or creating a podcast talking about their work. Um, we've we've kind of dusted off Comics Claptrap. It was a podcast, an audio podcast, and we kind of dusted it off during this shelter in place to turn it into a Zoom um, podcast. I don't know what you call it. I guess, is it a VV podcast? I don't know. To talk to people who would be normally be out doing book tours, in-person events, releasing their books at this time, and kind of giving them an opportunity to talk more about their new work, and so that people know more about it. So yeah, just having that opportunity to just kind of put people up, I guess, that of people's work that I love.
Mm.
So doing that through micro imprints or the podcast, and also the whole thing with self-publishing through the whole zine community, just that whole world just promotes community and sharing each other's work with each other in a very pure, I guess, easy way. Um, is something is really exciting, that it's very easy to do, really, to be able to share work through zines and through these different mediums, and also online, like especially now, like just all the online work that's going on, even just in Instagram, if not through online magazines. Like it's really exciting how easy it is to showcase work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm finding it's such an important space for comics creators of color, the
Yeah.
voices that haven't been traditionally allowed into those dominant spaces.
Right. Yeah.
Really exciting. There's the big zine fest in Oakland. There was one. Brina Nunez was, and
Oh
others
yeah,
were part
the
of it.
East
Yeah,
Bay. Yeah, East Bay. Yeah, I heard about that one. Yeah,
yeah.
and then I think
Ex-
they're still doing a Zine Fest
mm,
in some way, shape, or form
mhm.
this fall. So
So let's talk a little bit about Blame This on the Boogie, and as a kind of anatomy of a panel, and maybe you can guide us through your process here with some of your pages, idea
Mhm.
to panel layout, whatever comes to mind. And let's just start at the beginning here.
Yeah. So I guess that this is like the beginning of the book. This is the very beginning of Blame This on the Boogie, and it really was supposed to be sort of a cinematic take on I wanted to pretty much do sort of a musical, a Technicolor musical, an homage to musical. And so with this panel, it was sort of like uh, kind of starting from a very abstract place and then setting the scene and getting closer into the world that in which I lived in, which was Pittsburgh. So this panel here is just sort of this abstract scene of the universe coming from the cosmos, and then getting closer and closer, from the sky view to like the city view, and then to where everything looks the same. The houses are these tiny little squares, and everything looks very uniform and the same. And then you get to a house that get to a row of houses that look the same too, but are then becomes totally different when you enter inside the house.
So Rina, with this first one here, you decided to give it a full page, which in comic book space is, I mean, that's taking up a lot of narrative space, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think I just wanted to make it this huge expansive moment of that the universe is this huge, it's this huge, vast thing, and we're just sort of this small little thing in it. And so I wanted to really set the tone of this whole scene of being expansive, and it being animated through the colored pencils, and it being an abstract shape. And I had this thing about panels, that I don't know if it just comes from this painter side of me, but I just like to just have, like to dedicate one panel to each page sometimes. And because I always feel like I make that decision when I feel, again, like that the tone of this, just to have this to emphasize this tone of like, here's this world that we're entering in, and I think it's also sort of like a cinematic kind of camera view thing. So I'm kind of homaging from filmmaking, I guess, too.
Really interesting. And do you sketch first, or do you go right at it with your colored pencils?
I go right at it, and I do script and thumbnail, especially with really tricky scenes. So I do script. I get a page at a time, or like a chapter at a time, and I do really quick thumbnails. But as to things like this page is just kind of going at it straight with colored pencil, no penciling. But if there are certain scenes, like very kind of intricate scenes, like scenes with different characters and things like that, I will probably sketch that first. But it really depends on how tricky the page is. And this one was just more like, again, an abstract take on the universe. So it was kind of going back to my painting days, and just getting just going right in there in a blank canvas.
Yeah, I love it, and I love the way you invite us to, really to travel backward in time here. I love that.
Yeah.
So, and we get to close. You invite us to close our eyes. I love that. Thank you.
It's a portal into the world. Yeah, exactly.
As we kind of telescope out and then back in.
And I have to say that some of these kind of, now that I look at them now, because I tend to, whenever I'm done with the book, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I can't look at it again. But then there are some times where I come back, I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty good. But these kind of remind me of like Raymond Pettibon's drawings, especially the ones that talk about his California surfing drawings. He used to do. He's like a West Coast artist. I don't know if you guys know. So just the whole gestural and the strokes, and showing that animated, kind of like brush strokes type thing, but with colored pencils. So showing that animated look, and just having, and the colors, and making sure the colors were vibrant, just like his stuff.
And of course, you're choosing, kind of shades of blue, increasingly lighter as we kind of move
Yeah.
our in a way, or the way you're inviting our eye to move, but also our mind's eye to move kind of back in time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Really beautiful. One of the things that's extraordinary about good comic book storytelling is that it invites us to take pause, right? And to think about things
Mm-hmm.
that we normally just take for granted or that race by us. Um,
Yeah.
so as we move into the neighborhood of your childhood, and in Pittsburgh, tell us, can you walk us through the sort of ideas and then the kind of execution here?
Yeah. So I did a lot of sort of just doing a lot of research and looking at different homes and photographs that I've had found that I've kept of the neighborhood. Also, just doing Google Maps, but just also trying to pin down not just in memory, but also researching it through photographs and also visiting during the summertime. How the green looks like, the green during the summer, the green of the lawns, how lawns look like after they've been cut, you know. So just really paying attention to color was important with getting the environment down of the neighborhood. And also just a lot of it was memory too, just remembering how things looked um, in my mind. So especially these above the sky view point of view was definitely, I did a lot of research on how satellite maps look like and how specific shapes of certain things and that make it sort of abstract, but there are different parts of it that you can understand, you can get the impression of like, okay, that's a roof, or that's a swimming pool, that circle with a swimming pool. So there's sort of this iconography of what things are. So the reader, gives the reader kind of a task to kind of figure that out, figure what this is. Like this is a cul-de-sac basically from above, but from seeing it on this point of view, it looks like a very abstract line with a circle, and things are cutting shapes are connected to it, sort of like a hydra. And then in this next page, you see that, oh, it's a neighborhood, and there's trees, and the you could see the detail in trees and detail in houses. So coming from an abstract view into like, okay, now this is reality type of thing.
Yeah, and also amazingly, the way, I mean, if we actually have the comic, the comic
Yeah.
book open,
See,
we're getting
my passage.
kind of streets that cut, planes or create panels almost, right? And
Yeah.
divisions so that our eye has kind of
Hmm.
rhythm and balance.
Right.
Yeah, really beautiful.
Thank
I mean,
you.
I know this is all very intuitive to you, but yeah,
No, no.
it's
And
really
it's good to like
extraordinary.
kind of to break it down, because like like, yeah, there is interesting to kind of figure it out. How do artists figure out how to set up a scene, and just the colors were very important, especially with the point of view from the sky, kind of delineating what certain things were, like the gray is a roof, or red is a roof, and green is the grass. So it's a map. It's a map basically, and it's all, I think the previous page is all very flat,
Mm,
and it looks like a pattern basically. And so now you kind of see through this page that it's a neighborhood.
yeah, really amazing. And then of course now we're here,
Yeah,
and
at my
here's
house.
my house. Um, so again, beautifully kind of.
Right. And I wanted to make sure that the house wasn't that house always felt very asymmetric to me, and I mean, it is, but it seemed like the perfect house, but really it's not quite right. And it's like the porch is a little slanted, and
Mm,
there's four windows but it feels like it should be cut into like thirds, you know, like it doesn't look perfect to me. So there's, and the lines are not completely straight. And so that kind of was sort of how I saw my house too. In that it looked perfect. Like a lot of people are like, oh, this is just this great house with the columns, but it was, you know, wasn't quite right when I'd see it all the time. So I think this kind of brings that out. But I especially like how the colored pencils with the brick on the first level. I just love how that I just like the boldness of that. And that's how I like to use colored pencil, is I really go in there um and they're all different kinds of colors in there. There's like purple, pink, and red. So it's not just red brick, it's a lot of different colors.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's amazing how through drawing you make it your own story and not just a
mm-hmm.
kind of photographic or a Google like earth map, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. And then now that kind of
Mm-hmm.
skipping into the story itself, now we're already in the
Mm-hmm.
story, but I love this page. I don't know if it's, gosh, there's so much going on here, but maybe
There's
you
always
could,
something going on in my pages.
can you walk me through this one? I love it.
So yeah, this is when I started to go to Catholic school. It's like this very prestigious school in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. And I went there as my first grade. Um, and so this one is of a scene of a chapel that is inside the school. It's a really beautiful chapel. It's huge for a chapel. But at the top of where the altar is this painted eye of God that looks down on you, at the world or you. So like you just look up and you just see this big eye just staring down at you. And I think that's just very much key of the whole Catholic, of the whole fear of God, and that God is looking down on you all the time, and you need to behave and follow the commandments, I guess. So that was, so yeah, this is all colored pencil. And this is when we transferred from public school to a private school, and thinking like we would probably find more connection and more a nurturing community. And we find out that's not quite the thing that happens. That it's not quite different at all.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess with my pages in general, I just love to pack everything in a page. I think, and I guess this is one of these examples. But
And yet there's still we have very discrete time space units, right?
mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't have a grid, we don't have the traditional grid here, but you
Yeah,
definitely lay it out in a way where, you know, we're
right.
moving around in different time space moments.
Yeah, and that's what I like about the panel list structure. And I think I get this a lot. I get it a lot from Vanessa Davis. She's a great cartoonist, but also French cartoonists. That you think that they're doing spontaneous things, but everything is very much planned out. Like everything, it looks like, oh, this just came out of their sketchbook, and it's all painterly, and it's all, you know, but it's very much planned and thought out. And so I am very, very inspired by how they create a page. And I think the movement is, you know, left to right and going down. And I really want the reader to not just read it as a comic, but to also kind of be kind of have an immersive experience, like illustrations in children's books. Like when I was a kid, I always just sort of like dove into those worlds, and like, what, like, look at that little, you know, altar, or like podium, or just the color of her sweater. So I always wanted to be not just that you're reading the story, but also kind of looking at little parts of the drawings too,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're just there's a lot to see and a lot to discover visually.
Yeah, well, definitely do that with your wonderful
Yeah.
storytelling. And then this is very joyful, and there's room, there's sort of breathing room around the character.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it was, and also sort of dreamlike too. That she's found this, or I guess this is me, found this freedom of in watching musicals, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers musicals, and trying to emulate that freedom in dance that he has in these various different movies, and not caring about the world around her, and not caring about like being bullied or being different or being a certain way, and just knowing, being truthful to herself through dance, and not, and, in dance, that's how you feel, right? And so just being lost in that. So
Mhm.
that's what this whole page is, and the energy of that. um I start from being a realistic version of me, where I have my jeans and my green sweater, and then it turns into sort of a whirling dervish type thing, and a dream, kind of dreamscape, with the pink and the mauve and the yellow, and then it comes back to me like, oh, this is me dancing and it's fun. And then getting back to my reality, which is not liking school or not liking myself, being reminded of like who I am from other kids. um so yeah, so that's what that
Oh,
page.
it is amazing. It's everything. It's dynamic. It's powerful. It's also showing that children have this amazing capacity to be resilient, and how the mind and the imagination can be
Yeah.
such an important place for us.
Yeah, totally.
So here again, another one that I found to be really extraordinary.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I don't know what's happening here.
A lot is, I guess. I mean, I do have some space going on between panels. Like there is the notion of space, and that you don't have the panels going on, but there is room to breathe between each one, so you kind of understand where this is going in terms of reading it. Um, so yeah, this is like when I was getting ready for college, I think. And then this is when I was pretty much by myself, I think. And all my siblings had gone, and all the feeling of feeling secure had sort of gone. And so it looks like, oh yeah, there's the Paul Abdul cartoon cat. So a lot of it's like stems from pop culture during that time, and so that was a huge thing, was leaning towards pop culture, TV, music, movies, to kind of just get away from things. Um, and this one was basically that I had to sort of get my act together, but then the punchline is that it's not the career that my family would think would be the most secure career. It's like, I'm going to be an artist, which is and then my dad, with his quintessential cynical um, tone, says, well, at least it's not a degree in toilet. So yeah, that's always he's always a fun character to draw. And then my mom kind of doing a flop tick with her chinellas.
And I love also the balance here between the kind of absence of color behind your panels, and then of course
Yeah,
the lower half, which has color.
right. Right. And I guess it's the whole thing of like, I'm trying to be, an adult here and not be playful. And, this is a very kind of not serious, but a sobering moment. And then when, because the musical era is over for me. And then when I talk about that, I finally know what my career choice is, and then it's to be an artist, the vibrant red comes back. Of sort of like this illogical, I guess more passionate than rational, emotional part of me comes back.
Beautiful. And then this, of course,
Yeah,
I've loved this because it's a sort of self-reflexive moment, right?
I love it too. Yeah, this was kind of hard to do, especially getting darkness down and trying to like not make it look so flat is kind of hard. Um, I guess in cartooning for me. So I think this came out pretty well, but this one was a moment. It was a cartoonist diary for the Comics Journal. We're talking about trying to be productive. So I would try to be productive by waking up early and trying to do it before anything else would distract me. And so, and here are like all these little, if one little thing happens or a noise happens, then I just won't be able to start drawing, continue drawing. Um, and this was like around the time my son was a baby too, so I just knew that any time was really precious, and so I just had to make sure I was focused on drawing, even if it was like in the dark and it was the worst lighting, to at least be able to do something and feel at least productive, um, and being happy about that I actually did something in terms of a creativity, before my day even started with every other distraction in my life. So that's where
Yeah.
that's from. But
And it's almost as if the kind of there's the light in the middle there as a kind of,
mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
that's outside of my drawing space right now, and I know it's there, but I be in this like other space.
Right, it's encroaching. Yes.
And I see, are you a lefty when you are drawing?
I'm a total lefty. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
lefty. I just for drawing. Yeah, so I'm a righty with everything else. I don't
yeah.
know what that is. I feel like I think the thought was is because I broke my arm when my first day of nursery school, but I don't think that's true. I don't think that's why I'm a
Mm,
lefty. But
mm.
um, but yeah, I am. I'm just like Jaime Hernandez, so I'm excited. That's the
I
one
can
thing that we have in common is we're
I can't
lefties.
wait to see you, because I know when I watch Jaime do his stuff, it's very interesting because of the way he
And it's
puts.
funny because like people are like, "Are you a lefty?" And I'm like, because or if I'm signing or doing something and I'm like, "Yeah, like what's wrong? I don't understand." And it's probably because I'm like that, or and I'm like, and I don't even know that that's different. Or just like, or I have the paper like sideways. It's yeah. So
I love it. I
it's a
love
fun
it.
quality to have
Um,
to be shared with a legend.
yes. Well, two legends here. Rena, first of all, thank you for sharing
Yeah,
some
thank
of your
you.
insights. And secondly, I think and I could be wrong here, but I think you and Lynda Barry, at least in my sort of understanding and readings, are the
Hmm.
only two Filipina Americans, and I know she's half. Um, is that true, or are there
No,
others that
there,
I don't
there,
know?
there are there are totally others.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
Trinidad Escobar.
Oh,
She's a
yeah.
local cartoonist here. She does
Yeah.
amazing work. Um, I'm trying to think of others, but I know that they are out there.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of
Yeah.
that I meet on in conventions, but yeah, we definitely welcome more stories, more fun stories about our people, about our community,
Mm,
and I totally welcome that. It's always fun to read from other Filipino
mm.
Americans about our life. And it's exciting.
Are you working on a part two?
I'm working. I've been doing some little things, but I'm working actually on I'm working on a different project. It's a Filipino film noir, um, that it's very much different than the autobio that I've been used to doing. But this one is focusing on the immigration experience in San Francisco Bay Area during the 1930s, the Filipino manongs that came during that time. So there's a lot of research and a lot of looking at old photographs and looking actually at old photo albums from that I found from my family. So it's going to be a new kind of adventure. It's a very new challenge because I'm not used to doing fiction writing. I've done it in the past, but I'm just very much excited about talking more about the Filipino history, Filipino American history, having the chance to do that in a comics form, and
I'm
just
so
telling more
excited.
of our stories. Yeah. So, and
So
film noir. I
excited.
love film noir, so I think that too. I think that got is a part of it.
I love it. I can't wait. Rina Ayuyang, thank you so much. And
Thanks so much too. I
take
love
care, be
these.
well. And
You
I will be in
too.
touch.
Great. Thanks, Frederick.
Okay. Bye. Bye. I'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay. Bye.
All right.